Proven winners.
Proven winners Lambian. Beautiful ground cover. Good morning. Welcome back to the Return Homestead. As you can see, I am heading down to the guest house. We're going to be working on the remodel today. I got the goats here in the background. I just got finished getting all the animals fed. Marty's already been in here working, so let's go in and see what she's been up to. So for basic demolition, you don't need a lot of complicated tools. You'll need screwdrivers or some sort of impact driver, maybe some wire cutters. Be sure if you're dealing with electrical that you've gone out and turned the panel off. Make sure that circuit's dead before you go digging into it. Nice size hammers, tape measure. Crowbars are also a good thing to have on hand.
And my favorite tool.
And Marty's favorite tool, which is really a tiling tool. But man, that little flat piece on it comes in real handy. So Marty's already been busy in here, tearing these strips off of the wall. So I'm just going to grab some tools and get in here with her and start taking a look at what we've got. So if you do see electrical, don't cut into it. If you're not sure what it is or if it's live, please call an electrician. Let somebody who's a professional deal with it. You can go out to your breaker box. It's pretty easy to shut off breakers and make sure a circuit is dead. Go by Lowe's or Home Depot. Make sure you get one of those little testers. Looks like a small flashlight with a pinpoint on it. Those things run about 10 bucks, and they'll help you determine if the line actually has some power in it. You don't want to always trust those testers, but for something like testing to see if this line is hot, they're pretty convenient. All right, what are we up to?
We need to pull out that back wall.
So it's this wall that's coming down, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm curious to find out if there's any insulation of any accord in there.
We know we've got good insulation because this place stays pretty stable. This is the fun part. If you're not accustomed to doing demo work, it can be really hard to build up the courage to do this for the first time. But just like making any change in life, sometimes it takes a little destruction. You got to tear down some walls, and really it's just a matter of being willing to grab a crowbar, put a hole in the wall. Of course, on these it's a lot easier. We can see where these seams are, so I'm going to try to work near the seam and open up a hole that I can use to pry this stuff off the wall. In a mobile home, they've used staples to hold this stuff up. And those staples don't let go easy. If you're in a house, you may have a stick-built house. They may have used drywall screws, and if you can find those screws and back them out, the drywall will come right down. Otherwise, just keep pulling till you get this stuff off the wall. Be careful again of any electrical you see in the wall. We've got the 220 down here for the dryer. Just want to make sure I don't rip that out of the drywall. Man, this is looking good, hon.
Good. Yeah, it does look good.
Clean insulation. There haven't been any leaks. I prefer to see a vapor barrier over the top of this insulation. Normally this would have a craft bat on the or craft cover on the back of it. It's just paper, but it does provide a vapor barrier. It helps to keep moisture from traveling through the wall. They don't use them often in the mobile homes because they do use this vinyl covered gypsum. The vinyl provides that vapor barrier, so rather than putting it on the insulation, they just roll out a standard bat. This is 2x4 construction on the exterior walls, which is what we expected. So that is standard load bearing material. 16-inch on-centered studs with a standard bat in the middle.
Sweet.
Really exciting.
Yes. Because that means I don't have to tear out the whole house.
Yeah, we're not going to be tearing the whole house down to try to replace insulation if it's in this good a shape. Now this is a 2001 construction. So these are construction methods from more than 20 years ago.
Again, be careful of the electrical. It's an interesting way to deal with a dryer vent. I suppose it gets the job done. We'll do a little something to seal that floor a little bit better when we put this thing back together. That's pretty much it for tearing down a wall, guys. Put a hole in it and start pulling. Drywall may look solid, but it comes down pretty quick. So you are going to have some complications and decisions to make along the way. Don't wait until the very end to decide what you're going to replace and what you're going to try to keep. We're looking at this drywall right now, and it is this vinyl covered gypsum. You can see this original vinyl cover that goes over the top of the drywall, and it's been painted over. Now we know from experience that when we pull these strips off, we're also going to have a crack in between where the two pieces of drywall meet. Now, not a lot of attention is paid to trying to make sure the drywall meets up evenly. It's not well secured to the stud. If we come and try to mud over the top of this, the first thing we're going to have happen is that the mud's not going to want to stick to this paint. It's really difficult to get drywall mud to stick to a slick paint like that. The next thing that'll happen is if we get it well mudded and then we come back and paint this wall, at any place where this paint doesn't adhere that's already on the wall, if it starts peeling loose from the vinyl, we're going to end up with this great big rip mark in the paint job. And that is really hard to fix. You can sand that all you want. You can try drywall and using drywall mud to go over the top of it. It's really hard to cover those holes once the paint rips loose from this vinyl. So I think we're probably going to rip this wall out as well. We'll just replace all the walls in this laundry room. That way we'll get a nice even finish around the whole room. That's the way you like to see it come off. Wow, it's barely held on there.
Insulation looks better than I expected.
Yeah, this is really clean. Some sticking to the drywall. So there's some evidence here on the drywall that there has been water on this floor up against the wall.
Where the washer was leaking.
Yeah, it's kind of expected, you know, whenever you have a wet space, if you're going to get leaks, you want to try to keep it away from the drywall. That's one of the reasons why the drywall is usually installed at least 1/4 inch off of the floor. Helps to keep this bottom edge from getting down into the water and soaking the water up. You can always cover that with floor trim when you're done, so it doesn't matter that there's a little gap at the bottom. I wish they had done that here. Yep, we do have some water damage in the back side here. Interesting. So this insulation did have vapor barrier on it. Got mounted to the outside, and it looks like this one, they actually got the vapor barrier off. So we'll have to address this water damage, make sure it's not more significant. It looks really old though, so I'm not too worried. If you ever wonder how effective it is to just run screws through drywall, there's what it looks like on the back side. Those screws are not holding on to anything. So don't trust your drywall. Always get a stud finder. If you need to hang something on the wall, make sure you're putting your screw directly into the stud. It will go through the drywall and into the stud, but if you mount it in here, just in the drywall, it's not going to hold. One more wall to go, so we are going to take the drywall off of this door wall as well. Want to make sure we're being careful of the light switch. We do need the lights to work in here, so I'll be watching out for that to make sure we don't pull anything off of the electrical system.
We'll go ahead and get the drywall off of this. So the people that build mobile homes do a fantastic job of making this look much like a stick-built home. So when you look at a door frame, it may seem like a very solid piece of construction. You may be afraid about ripping it out, but this is just really thin pieces of wood that they put in here. And so this stuff just pops right off. Okay. Where's your tool, huh?
Hang on.
All right. Even this door frame may seem like it's pretty solid after all this designed to hold the door, but there's only really thin finishing nails. Oh man, those are really small. Holding this together, so it's pretty easy to pull these apart. As you can see, the mobile home doesn't take a whole lot of critical tools to pull it apart. I remember when we were working in the depot, the largest sledgehammer you could find was often the best tool to use on that demo. But this stuff comes apart pretty quickly. I'm going to leave this trim on the outside face for now. We're going to try not to damage the wall out here just in case we can salvage that in the hallway. If I can avoid putting drywall all the way down the hallway, having to tape, mud, paint, I'm going to try to keep this stuff up here. Back here. Actually a little disappointing. I would have thought it would have been a little bit more substantial around a door frame, but this is just a 1x, which they call this a 1x3. It's not really a 1x3. This is actually 3/4 of an inch by 2.5 inches. Not a whole lot of wood to mount a door on. So I'm just going to tap around this electrical real quick. Just want to break it out from the rest of the wall, so I don't inadvertently pull it down.
No insulation.
No insulation.
That's why it was so noisy when laundry was being done.
Yeah, if you've got a washer and a dryer that are both in here operating and they're shaking back and forth, this room without any insulation in the walls is like the echo chamber on a guitar, and it just magnifies the sound through the whole house. So we're going to be adding interior insulation in all the rooms that we redo. Try to cut down on that noise. I can honestly say I don't think in all of the work that I've done in construction that I've ever seen a service loop of electrical cords that was quite that extensive. Good job, electricians. Normally inside of the wall, the electrician will try to leave at least a small loop, 1 or 2 feet of additional wire. So if you need to rewire later or you need to tie into that circuit, you've got some wire to work with. Wire stretchers for electrical wire, exceptionally expensive, very difficult to use. So you won't see many people using them. Yes, that was a joke. All right.
you see left of the laundry room here, huh?
Not much.
Just the stuff in the corners.
Mm-hmm.
What you wind up with on the floor is a big pile of not useful for anything. So we're gonna get this mess cleaned up before we do any more construction. I don't want to keep walking on top of this pile in order to get anything done. So we're gonna sign off for a little bit, get this mess cleaned up out of here. We'll bring you guys back in as we start rebuilding.
So now that we've got the space a little cleaned up here, now it's not completely cleaned, but we'll be cleaning more as we move along. Let's take a look at what this construction is actually like. So this insulation is fairly tight in place. We've got 2x4 construction. That's going to be at least an R13 bat inside of these walls. So good deep insulation. It's one of the reasons this home stays so stable temperature-wise. You can see in mobile home construction, things are a little bit different. So your ceiling panels actually are put on long before the walls are put up. So the ceiling material actually runs up underneath the walls. One of the reasons why we're trying to avoid doing anything to the ceiling panels. We could go out and buy new acoustic panels, and there are definitely some places where it's been damaged, and putting up new panels would certainly be the easy and fast way to correct all of those little problems. But that would mean cutting each one of the panels to size, because we won't be able to shove everything up underneath the walls. I don't want to pull these bats too loose. They're very well secured. This one came loose on its own. You can see,
Is that masonite?
I don't know what that is. I mean, it feels like and sounds like just cardboard. So I have to do a little research. I'm not really sure.
No, that's a type. It's a fiber board of sorts.
It is a fiber board. I'm just not sure what type. So the outside walls are sheeted, which is probably why this house is so tight air-wise. So it does have some sort of a protective barrier on the outside of the studs before they build the inside walls.
I wonder why they took the vapor barrier off of it, the baths. It was on there.
Now this is an R11 unfaced bat. Not sure what the paper was for. That is, well, it's an opportunity that we have to think about. So R11 was sufficient for this mobile home to meet its Energy Star ratings in 2001. But a standard 2x4 bat nowadays, 16-inch on-centered studs, is an R13. So this is the first look we're getting at the inside of the walls. Because we're not pulling these panels down, it's going to be difficult for us to explain or show you the truss system that actually holds the roof on the structure. I'm going to link a video for you in the description. Somebody else has recently done this where they did pull all the ceiling down. And he does a great job of explaining the truss setup on a mobile home. This is the little electrical tester that I was telling you about. You can pick these up at Lowe's or Home Depot. They're only about 10 bucks. And all you got to do is turn this thing on. And if you put it on a hot wire, it'll give you an indicator. So anytime electricity is inside of a wire, it's going to have magnetic current around it. And this little detector will pick up on that magnetism and tell you if the wires are hot or not. Again, it's better if you have some understanding of electrical systems, how they fit together, how they're wired up, what each piece of the system is, where these wires go. If you're asking yourself that question, you probably should start there. You could hire an electrician, just watch him work for a little bit. If you hire a good one, he'll probably explain to you what he's doing as he goes. That's how I've learned a lot of this. I found that Lowe's and Home Depot are also great places to come across tradespeople. If you have questions about materials, if you just ask them politely, don't waste a lot of their time. They are in a hurry, they're at work. But a quick question about which type of electrical outlet you need to use, you can usually get a good answer from them. Help you to stop from making a mistake. Those are the screws we still haven't gotten out from pulling that cabinetry down. Another electrical outlet here we'll need to deal with. So I haven't pulled that piece of wall down yet. We'll definitely be replacing this mounting box for the valves and the vent. So plumbing is another area that you'll have to become familiar with, and you'll need to understand all of the different parts. This is just a basic valve for hooking up the washer. This is an air vent. You've got to have a vent inside of any drain. Actually, this is a part of the drain, sorry. And there's the air vent. Now this is an interior air vent. In most stick-built construction, this vent will connect with a larger vent system that's actually vented above the roof. So you have a roof penetration where this vent will stick out, and it allows the system to pull air in because this water starts here and comes down the pipe. It's going to hit the P-trap at the bottom, and that P-trap prevents gases from coming back up from the sewer or septic system. So it holds water all the time, but as you start to fill this tube up, it's going to force a huge slug of water out of the pipe and into the drain. Well, if there wasn't an air vent here to allow air to come in behind that slug, then it wouldn't be able to move through the pipe. It would just create a vacuum. So it's another area that if you're going to get into a remodel, you should understand all of the parts of a basic plumbing system and how they fit together. And these water lines just go down underneath the house and they'll connect to the water main somewhere underneath the house. So our water comes in here, goes into the washing machine, and then gets ejected through a hose into the top of the drain, and then down through the P-trap. The air vent allows the water to flow down into the main drain for the house. One question that comes up quite often when people are talking about a remodel is whether or not a wall is load bearing. Meaning, is it a part of the structure that's holding the roof up? Removing a load-bearing wall can be dangerous because then there's nothing supporting the weight of the roof. Now, it's pretty easy in this house to tell where the load-bearing walls are because they all are on the outside. Those are going to be built with 2x material, either 2x4. In some areas, they may allow 2x3s, but standard's going to be a 2x4, like we see here. And this is actually able to hold the weight of the roof up. You also have a 2x4 top plate, oftentimes a double top plate depending on the weight of the wall or roof that it's holding up. And there's also a 2x4 bottom plate. Now in a mobile home, all of this is going to rest on top of the subfloor. You may find some instances where the outside walls actually sit on a rim joist and are not supported on top of the subfloor. But we know that this wall is definitely not going to be load bearing. It's made with 1x material, so that's 3/4 of an inch thick. You can see how flimsy this is, so that's not going to be able to support any weight at all. There's no cross supports that would prevent bowing. So if the board can bow significantly, it's not going to support a lot of weight. We do have one 2x3 in this wall, and that's only because there's a change in direction on the electrical. So they had to staple off the electrical to that board, so they stuck in a 2x3 stud. So these interior walls look like they were built all with this 3/4 inch material. So all the interior walls, including the bottom plates and the top plates, are all 1x3s. So Marty and I have been talking about this wall. We had planned to replace it completely. It is an interior wall, but it does separate the guest bedroom from the laundry room. So we were going to try to replace this with a standard 2x4 wall, 16-inch on-centered studs, and insulate it. Now, the reason we would go to a 2x4 instead of a 2x3 would be for the insulation to fit, but we're not interested in the R value of that insulation. We're just looking for the sound dampening qualities, which is really all about mass inside of the wall. So we could put a standard R13 2x4 bat inside of these wall spaces and just squeeze it down when we put the drywall up. It'll give us the same insulative qualities for sound. We'll lose some of the R value for heat, but that's fine. We're not that interested on the interior walls. One of the other things to consider, the bats are either for 16-inch on-centered or 24-inch on-centered studs. Where's that tape measure? Here we go. So we need to make sure we can actually fit the bats in here. So that's only 12 inches
So they'll have to be cut.
between those studs. So we'd have to slice a bat open. What I'm most concerned about is here. I don't know how they measured this, so this looks like it's even more than 24. No, I think we could manage there. And so that's a standard 24-inch bat. So most of these walls are probably 24-inch on-centered studs. This one just happens to be 16 because of the 2x3 that was stuck in there. Or actually less than 16. It's this last bay. So we're measuring from the outside edge of this stud to the outside of this stud, and you can see we're right at about 16 inches. So it's close enough. We could squeeze a bat in there.
Are we taking this wall out?
So what about the door wall?
That's a 2x3.
We could leave it as well. What I could do is come back with some 2x3s to shore up this door frame. So we'll just stick a 2x3 inside of the wall there.
Okay.
Give us a more solid place for the door to open and close from.
Put a standard door in.
And put a standard door in,
Okay.
assuming we can find one. So let's see what this door frame measures out at. So we're looking at 29.5-inch rough opening.
That's so narrow. 28-inch door would work.
28-inch would work, yeah. And top to bottom, our rough opening is, call it 81.5.
That's standard.
More like 81.25.
So an 80-inch door is
Standard
fine.
80-inch door would fit into that. So yeah, I think we'll actually leave the framing up and add a 2x3 along the inside of the door frames, so that'll give us a good solid structure for actually holding a standard hinge. Mobile homes, the hinges are very lightweight. They're only sufficient enough to open and close a very lightweight door. So we're going to be putting a standard door in here with standard hinges. We'll probably buy the door already inside of the frame, so then it's just a matter of mounting the door inside of the rough opening. Yeah, I think that's the way we'll go. What we need to be sure of is that any door frame we get is probably going to be 2x4, not
Yes.
2x3. So that's going to be a little bit problematic unless we can find one that has a 2x3 frame. And again, guys, this is not that complicated an issue. It just means that the door is going to be 3.5 inches thick, but this board is only 2.5 inches thick. So we're going to end up with an extra inch of door frame that would stick outside of the wall. But there's ways to trim that so that you wouldn't know the difference. All right, good. So there has to be some sort of a penetration where the dryer is going to be set up to allow the dryer to be vented. In this mobile home, it went through the floor. This type of flex hose is intended to be a temporary solution It is not a permanent vent for a dryer. So we'll be replacing this probably with more than likely another temporary, but I'd like to go ahead and put in some permanent plumbing, as it's referred to, for the dryer. So we'll get that set up correctly when we rebuild. This is a 220 outlet. So to make sure our dryer is wired up correctly. You may not know this, but dryers can be wired up depending on the plug that they have attached to them. So if you need to take a 12 volt or 120 volt and turn it into a 220, it's just a matter of swapping the plug out. There'll be instructions with your dryer to explain that. You may have to go buy the new wire with the new plug on it, but they're pretty easy to swap out. Then there's this lighting fixture. It's not a bad lighting fixture, but inside of this tiny room, it's, as you can see, not producing a whole lot of light. And this is going to be the laundry room. We want good lighting in here. So we'll probably pull this out. It'll mean having to replace or cover up a hole. But we may make up for that by simply adding 3 slimline can lights. The slim lines can be mounted directly into the drywall. They have a small junction box attached to them, and you just wire the junction box up, plug the light into it, and then the light just clips into the drywall itself. Pretty clean installation. We used them in Marti's studio, and they should mount just fine inside of this acoustic ceiling tile. Yeah. I wish this showed up on camera better. Y'all probably can't see this, but it kind of looks like in this area that the ceiling panel is flat and then this wall pushes up on it so that there is a definite sway. We've also got this area right here near the door where I think even on camera you can see that the panel is not flat. I was concerned at first that this may indicate a leak, even an old leak, but this is extremely solid. It's not moving or giving at all, so we're well supported here. I'm not sure why it would be that way. And if you look at the top of the wall as well, right here above the top plate, you can see how as we move to the exterior, our reveal or our gap here gets bigger. So they just use the these little trim boards to kind of cover up those gaps. We have the same issue on this wall. So it's well supported by the top plate, and then as we get to the edge of the building, maybe almost a 1/4 inch gap there. Not a big deal. This happens often. Remember, this is not a structural wall. It's not load bearing, other than it does appear to be holding the ceiling panel up a little bit.
Okay.
Everybody has their favorite tool for doing this. I prefer to use a pair of diagonal cutters. Nice big heavy duty pair. It's cleanup time. The cleanup can be very tedious. A lot of people will not do a remodel just because they don't want to take the time to go in and get all of these staples out. But if we're going to rehang drywall here, we've got to get these staples loose. So yes, this is going to mean a lot of tedious work, probably several hours worth of trying to get these staples to come out of the wall. Actually some finishing nails in here too. Huh. Some of these nails will bite in really tight to these boards. That's it, guys. You got to just keep pulling. One nail after another until the boards are clean. And it looks like they may actually have used some sort of adhesive to put up the paneling when it was being built. They probably used a weak adhesive that would simply hold the panel up while they were putting staples in. That would allow one person to do the work. You didn't have to have somebody holding the panel and somebody else operating a staple gun. This is just going to take us many hours of pulling staples until we get these things clean, and we'll be able to scrape or sand all of this adhesive off, and then we'll have good clean studs to work with to hang drywall. We'll see you in a little bit. I'm always interested in learning more about different construction methods. Now typically in a stick-built house, you put up all the framing, then come back and attach the drywall. When they build mobile homes, it's a little bit different. They're doing it in a factory. The last thing they want to do is to have to cut drywall to length. So they'll put up the exterior walls, drywall everything with the vlog, and then they'll put up the interior walls, which means you'll have walls that don't match up framing wise. So you have a sheet of vlog in between the interior walls and the exterior walls. Not standard construction. It requires a little bit of additional thought process in order to manage this when you're hanging new drywall. So that's going to have to be cut clean back to the studs rather than trying to pull all of this drywall out from behind this wall. We'll just cut it clean here at the edge, and that'll allow us to lay drywall in over the top of what's already there. Also, when you're working in tight confines like this, be aware of anyone who's working with you. I have to watch out constantly for my wife. She's usually right behind me, working right along with me. And application of extreme force on bits and pieces that don't want to come loose oftentimes end up with things flying around like elbows and tools, and it's very easy to injure your partner. So be aware of where your partner is while you're working. Just a point of clarification, I have not injured my wife today. It has happened before. And a couple hours later, this is what it looks like, all nicely stripped down. Got all those staples pulled out of the wall, probably about 1,000 of them. We still got some adhesive that's still stuck to these studs. We'll work on getting that stuff scraped off or sanded off in the next few days. But everything looks pretty good. There's some small evidences of some old water damage. We're not seeing evidence of any new leaks. All the electrical is still solid and tight. No cuts or frays in the wires anywhere. The insulation is good. A little concerned about this joint on the supply lines for the washer. So I may look at possibly at least replacing those couplings. If those weren't glued on correctly, that could cause a problem. That could be where the leak's coming from. I suspect it's actually these valves. I think they're just old and weren't operated often enough. So they're not closing completely when turned off. It's causing them to leak. We are going to be replacing all of these electrical outlet boxes. This particular type of box is designed to have this little lever flop over behind the drywall, so it's held only in the drywall. I prefer to have a nice solidly mounted box that's actually attached to a 2x3 or stud. So we'll be replacing those. And we're going to leave that outside drywall into the hallway. Try not to disturb it. That way we won't have to drywall tape and mud the entire hallway. That was on today's agenda. We've still got plenty of work to do with the animals. The grass needs to be cut. It is a never-ending list of things to do. Remember, there's always more to do, and it will all get done. You just can't get in a hurry about it. Thanks for watching and joining us here on this small portion of the remodel project. Please be sure to subscribe so you can follow us along as we turn this 2001 mobile home into a place that we want to live. Be sure to hit the like button while you're subscribing. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time.